He nearly ran her over. She nearly threw coffee at him. Instead, their worlds collided on a cold street corner, with one steaming cup and a dream passed down through generations. What came next, neither of them expected. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning air was crisp as Yara Fields arranged the freshly baked pastries in wicker baskets on her food cart. At 41, her hands moved with the confidence that came from years of routine. The corner of Mercer and 6th had been her spot for the past 5 years, ever since her grandmother passed away and left her the family recipes. Another day, another dollar, she murmured to herself, adjusting the small chalkboard menu that listed her specialties. The rich aroma of Café de Ola filled the air around her cart. The cinnamon-spiced coffee was her bestseller, made exactly the way her grandmother had taught her, strong enough to keep dreams alive, sweet enough to make them worth chasing. Yara wiped her hands on her apron and looked around at the awakening city. Business people hurried past in suits, college students trudged by with oversized backpacks, and construction workers arrived for their early shifts. Many of them were her regulars, people who counted on her coffee and pastries to start their day right. "Morning, Yara." "The usual, please," called Marco, a mailman who never missed his morning stop. "Coming right up," she replied with a smile, pouring his coffee into a paper cup and handing him a warm cheese roll. This little corner was more than just her livelihood. It was her sanctuary, the place where she felt connected to her roots, to her grandmother's legacy. Between this morning cart and her night job as a janitor at an office building downtown, Yara managed to keep her head above water. Not comfortable, but surviving. And in this city, survival was its own kind of victory. She was just serving another customer when she heard the roar of an expensive engine. A sleek black car took the corner too fast, tires screeching as it barreled toward her cart. Yara screamed, dropping the coffee she was holding. Time seemed to slow down as the car swerved, missing her by inches. Her pot of Café de Ola toppled over, spilling across the sidewalk. A basket of fresh bread crashed to the ground. The car, some kind of luxury sports model that probably cost more than her apartment, came to a sudden stop. The driver's door flew open, and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. Dominic Voss, at 48, had the confident stance of someone who was used to being in charge. His dark hair was perfectly styled, despite the early hour, and his watch alone could probably pay her rent for a year. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking shaken but quickly recovering his composure. Then, before she could answer, his tone changed. "Why would you set up so close to the street? I nearly hit you." Yara stared at him, her heart still racing from the near miss. But fear was quickly giving way to anger. This man had almost run her over, and he was blaming her. "Because I can't afford a storefront," she replied, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "And because I was here first." Something in her tone, firm, unapologetic, made Dominic Voss pause. Most people cowered around him. Most people apologized even when they weren't wrong. This woman did neither. "Well, you should be more careful," he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "I've been setting up here for 5 years without incident," Yara countered, kneeling to pick up her fallen bread. "Maybe you should be the one who's more careful, taking corners like you're on a racetrack." A small crowd had gathered, watching the exchange with interest. Dominic noticed them and straightened his tie, suddenly aware of the scene they were creating. "Let me pay for the damages," he said, reaching for his wallet. "I don't want your money," Yara replied, standing back up with dignity. "I just want to get back to work. My customers are waiting." Dominic looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She wasn't young, but there was a timeless quality to her face, pride in her eyes, strength in the set of her jaw. Something about her made him feel small, despite his height and status. "At least let me help clean up," he offered, his tone softening. "No need," she said firmly. "I've got this. You're probably late for something important anyway." He was late. A board meeting that he should have been presiding over had started 10 minutes ago, but for some reason he hesitated. "I'm sorry," he said finally, the words feeling strange in his mouth. How long had it been since he'd actually apologized to someone? Yara just nodded, already turning back to her cart to salvage what she could of the morning's setup. Dominic got back in his car and drove away, But the image of her, steady and unbending, stayed with him. Throughout his meeting, he found himself distracted. Not by the near accident itself, but by her. The way she hadn't trembled when he raised his voice. The way she had looked him in the eye without flinching. "Mr. Voss, your thoughts on the proposal?" His assistant's voice pulled him back to the present. "I need some more time to review the numbers," he said, covering his distraction. "Let's revisit this tomorrow." That night, in his penthouse apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Dominic couldn't sleep. The woman from the street cart kept appearing in his mind. What was her name? Had she told him? Had he even asked? He got up and walked to the window, looking out at the glittering cityscape. Somewhere out there, she was probably getting ready for bed too. Or maybe working a second job, since she'd mentioned not being able to afford a storefront. For the first time in years, Dominic felt a twinge of something like shame. When had he become the kind of man who yelled at strangers on the street? Who blamed others for his own carelessness? The next morning, against all logic, he found himself driving back to that same corner. He parked his car, legally this time, and walked the last block. She was there, her cart set up exactly as it had been before. The rich smell of cinnamon coffee drifted through the air. A line of customers waited patiently for their turn. When he reached the front of the line, her eyes narrowed in recognition. "No coffee for men who almost run me over," she said, but there was less bite in her tone than he expected. "I deserve that," he replied, surprising himself with his own honesty. "Yes, you do." She turned to serve the next customer, clearly dismissing him. But Dominic didn't leave. He stepped to the side and waited until the line cleared. "I came to apologize properly," he said when she finally looked at him again. "Yesterday was entirely my fault. I was driving too fast and I wasn't paying attention." Yara studied him, trying to figure out his angle. Men like him didn't come back to apologize to women like her. They moved on, forgot, considered themselves. "Above such things, what's your name?" he asked. Yara Fields. "I'm Dominic Voss." "I know who you are," she said with a small nod. "Your picture was in the business section last month. Something about a tech merger." He was surprised she recognized him. Most people didn't, despite his company's success. "That doesn't make what happened okay," he said. "I'd like to make it right." "I told you yesterday I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She paused, considering him with those steady eyes that had haunted him all night. "Nothing from you," she said finally. "But thank you for coming back to apologize. That counts for something." A customer approached and Yara turned away to serve them. Dominic stood awkwardly for a moment, unsure what to do next. He wasn't used to being dismissed. He wasn't used to not getting his way. "Your coffee smells amazing," he said when the customer left. "It's my grandmother's recipe, Café de Ola." "Could I try a cup?" Yara hesitated, then gave a small nod. $5. "Expensive for street coffee," he commented without thinking. "Our quality ingredients cost money," she replied evenly, "and I don't cut corners." Chastened, he handed her a $10 bill. "Keep the change." She poured him a cup from the simmering pot, the rich aroma of cinnamon and coffee beans rising with the steam. Their fingers brushed as she handed it to him, and he was surprised by the roughness of her hands. Working hands. Dominic took a sip and couldn't hide his surprise. "This is incredible." "My grandmother would be pleased to hear that," Yara said, and for the first time he saw a hint of softness in her expression. "She taught you to make it?" Yara nodded. "She taught me everything I know about baking and cooking. This cart was her dream before it was mine." "Was?" "She passed away 5 years ago, left me her recipes and enough money for this cart." Yara gestured to the simple setup. "Not exactly the cafe she always talked about, but it's something." Dominic found himself wanting to know more about her grandmother, about the cafe that never was, about Yara herself. But his phone rang, breaking the moment. "I have to take this," he said, stepping away to answer the call. When he finished, Yara was serving another customer. He waited again, sipping the coffee that was indeed worth every penny of its $5 price tag. "I have to go," he said when she was free again. "But the coffee was truly excellent, thank you." Yara gave him a measured look. Thank you for coming back to apologize. Not many would have. As he walked back to his car, Dominic felt strangely unsettled. Something about Yara Fields had gotten under his skin. Her dignity, her pride, the way she stood her ground. He hadn't felt this way about anyone in a very long time. And as he drove to his office, surrounded by leather and luxury, he already knew one thing for certain. He would be back at that corner tomorrow. What he didn't know was that this chance encounter, this moment of carelessness, followed by an unexpected connection, was about to change both their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. Because sometimes the most important turning points come disguised as ordinary days. And sometimes the people who change our stories forever enter not with a bang, but with the simple offering of a cup of coffee, made with care from recipes passed down through generations. For the next week, Dominic Voss found himself drawn back to the corner of Mercer and 6th every morning. He told himself it was just for the coffee. It really was exceptional, but deep down he knew better. Back again? Yara asked on Friday, a hint of amusement in her voice as she poured his now usual cup of Café de Olla. Best coffee in the city, he replied with a shrug, as though that explained everything. The truth was more complicated. Something about Yara Fields fascinated him. The way she worked with quiet dignity, the way she greeted each customer by name, the way she never seemed impressed by his expensive suits or the sleek car he now parked a block away. You must have a lot of free time for a CEO, she commented, handing him a pastry he hadn't ordered. What's this? Concha. Sweetbread. On the house. Dominic raised an eyebrow. I thought you didn't give freebies to men who almost run you over. That rule expires after a week of good behavior, she replied with the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, softening the lines around her eyes, making her look younger somehow. He took a bite of the sweetbread. This is amazing. Did your grandmother teach you to make these too? Yara nodded, turning to serve another customer. Dominic stepped aside but didn't leave. He'd started coming earlier each day, lingering a little longer, watching her work. Don't you have an empire to run? She asked when she was free again, gesturing to his phone which had buzzed several times. They can manage without me for an hour, he said, surprising himself with how true it was. His company, Vostech, had grown so big that sometimes he felt more like a figurehead than its founder. Must be nice, Yara said, wiping down her counter. Some of us don't have that luxury. How many jobs do you work? He asked, realizing he'd been wondering this for days. 2. This cart in the mornings and I clean offices at night. She didn't say it with shame or pride, just as a fact. That's a long day. Life is expensive in this city, she shrugged. And I'm saving for something. The cafe? He guessed, remembering what she'd mentioned about her grandmother's dream. Yara looked surprised that he'd remembered. Yes, someday. A real place with walls and a roof, and maybe even a few tables. With your talent, you could make it happen. Talent doesn't pay rent, she replied matter-of-factly. But I'm getting there, slowly. A gust of wind blew down the street, sending napkins flying and causing Yara to grab her cart to steady it. Dominic noticed the wheels looked worn, one of them slightly wobbly. How old is this cart? He asked. Old enough, she answered, avoiding his eyes, but it works fine. Dominic's phone rang again, and this time he couldn't ignore it. I have to take this, it's my assistant. Yara nodded, already turning to greet her next customer. See you Monday, Mr. Voss. Dominic, he corrected before answering his phone. Call me Dominic. The weekend felt strangely empty without his morning visit to the cart. Dominic found himself thinking about Yara as he sat through a charity gala on Saturday night, nodding absently as a woman in diamonds talked about her latest vacation. Dominic, are you even listening? The woman, was her name Vivian or Victoria, touched his arm to get his attention. Sorry, just distracted by work, he lied smoothly. You're always working, you should take a vacation. My family has a villa in Tuscany that's just divine in the spring. He smiled politely, but found himself wondering what Yara did on her weekends. Did she rest? Did she have family? Friends? Was there someone special in her life? Monday morning couldn't come soon enough. He arrived at her cart earlier than usual, surprised to find her still setting up. You're early, she commented, lifting a heavy container from a beat-up station wagon parked nearby. Without thinking, Dominic moved to help her. "Let me get that." "I've got it," she insisted, but the strain in her voice betrayed her. "I know you can handle it," he said carefully, "but you don't have to." After a moment's hesitation, she let him take the container. "Fine, there are 3 more in the back." As they unloaded supplies together, Dominic noticed dark circles under her eyes. "Rough weekend?" Yara sighed. "Water pipe burst in my apartment. Building. Spent most of Saturday dealing with that mess. That's awful. Was anything damaged?" "Just some books and a rug." She waved dismissively. "Nothing important." But something in her voice told him that wasn't entirely true. "What kind of books?" he asked, helping her set up the coffee pot. Yara gave him a surprised look. "Cookbooks mostly. My grandmother's collection. I saved most of them, but a few—" She trailed off, her usual composure cracking just slightly. Dominic felt an unexpected urge to fix it, to replace the books, to find her a better apartment, to make sure she never had to worry about burst pipes again. But he already knew she wouldn't accept that kind of help. "I'm sorry about your books," he said simply. "Life happens," she replied, straightening her shoulders and getting back to work. As the morning went on and customers came and went, Dominic found himself staying longer than usual. When the rush slowed, he helped her restock napkins and cups. "You know, you're not what I expected," Yara said suddenly. "Oh? And what did you expect?" "Rich guys like you don't usually hang around food carts helping with napkins. They don't usually notice when someone's had a bad weekend." "Maybe I'm not like other rich guys," he said, attempting humor. "Maybe not," she agreed, studying him thoughtfully. "So what's your story, Dominic Voss? How does a man end up with a car that costs more than most people's houses?" It was the first personal question she'd asked him, and he found himself wanting to answer honestly. "Hard work, some luck, and probably too much ambition," he said. "I started Vostech in my garage 20 years ago. Right idea, right time. Self-made man." She nodded. "That explains a few things." "Like what?" "Like why you keep coming back here instead of sending an assistant for your coffee." She smiled slightly. "You didn't always have people doing things for you." "My father was a mechanic," Dominic heard himself saying. "Worked 3 jobs to put me through college. Died before he could see what became of it all." It had been years since he'd talked about his father to anyone. Why was he telling her now? "He would have been proud," Yara said quietly. "I'm not so sure," Dominic admitted. "He always said success meant nothing if you forgot where you came from." A comfortable silence fell between them. For the first time, Dominic felt like Yara was actually seeing him, not his wealth or his position, but him. "What about you?" he asked. "Was it always you and your grandmother?" Yara nodded. "My parents died when I was young, car accident. Abuela raised me on her own." She gestured to the cart. "She had a cart like this back in Mexico before coming here. Taught me everything, how to cook, how to work hard, how to keep going when things get tough. She sounds amazing." She was. Yara's eyes took on a distant look. "She never got her cafe, though. That's why it matters so much to me. It's not just my dream, it's hers too." The next day, when Dominic arrived for his coffee, he brought a small gift bag. "What's this?" Yara asked suspiciously. "Nothing expensive," he assured her, knowing her pride by now. "Just something small." Inside was a cookbook, a vintage collection of Mexican recipes that had taken his assistant half the night to track down. Yara's eyes widened as she carefully flipped through the pages. This looks like one of the books I lost." "Is it the same one?" "I took a guess based on what you'd said. Not exactly the same, but very similar." Her fingers traced the recipes with reverence. "Thank you." This was thoughtful. It was the first time she'd thanked him for anything, and Dominic felt ridiculously pleased with himself. As autumn settled over the city, bringing cooler mornings and earlier sunsets, Dominic's visits to the cart became the highlight of his day. He found himself sharing things with Yara that he rarely discussed with anyone. His frustrations with the board, his ideas for new products, even his doubts about the direction of his company. One rainy morning in October, he arrived to find Yara struggling to keep her canopy from collapsing under the weight of the water. "This weather is killing my business," she muttered. wringing out a soaked towel. Dominic glanced around at the empty sidewalk that would normally be lined with customers. "Can't you take a day off when it's like this?" "Bills don't take days off," she replied simply. An idea began to form in his mind, a way he might be able to help without offending her pride. But he would need to be careful about it. The next morning was even worse. Not just rain, but wind that threatened to topple the cart entirely. When Dominic arrived, he was carrying a large umbrella and something else, a portable space heater, still in its box. "What's that?" Yara asked, eyeing the package. "A space heater, small but powerful. I thought maybe your customers would appreciate staying warm while they wait." She looked skeptical. "I don't have anywhere to plug it in." "Battery, operated," he said, opening the box to show her. "Latest model. My company actually designed the battery technology. It wasn't entirely a lie. Vostek had developed the battery, though the heater itself was made by another company." Yara hesitated, and for a moment Dominic thought she would refuse, but then she nodded. "For the customers, thank you. It was a small victory, but it felt significant." As he helped her set up the heater, positioning it so that the warm air created a comfortable bubble around the cart, their hands brushed more than once. Each time, Dominic found himself lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "You're going to be late for work," Yara said finally, though she didn't move away. "I'm the boss," he replied with a smile. "I can be late if I want to." As the weeks passed, Dominic found more small ways to help. A better umbrella, a sturdier, folding table, a set of insulated cups that kept the coffee hot longer. Each gift was practical, never extravagant, always presented as something that would benefit her customers rather than her personally, and each time, the distance between them seemed to shrink just a little more. In his office, looking out over the city skyline, Dominic found himself thinking about her constantly. About her hands, rough from work but gentle when they handed him his coffee. About her eyes, dark and intelligent, that saw through his practiced charm to something more real underneath. About her smile, rare but genuine, that made him feel like he'd accomplished something truly worthwhile. "Mr. Voss?" His assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts. "The board members are waiting in the conference room." "What?" "Oh, right. The quarterly meeting. And Ms. Spencer called again about the charity auction next week. She's hoping you'll escort her." Dominic frowned. Barbara Spencer, daughter of one of his biggest investors, and a woman who'd made it clear she had designs on becoming the next Mrs. Voss? Once he might have been interested. She was beautiful, well-connected, exactly the kind of woman someone in his position was expected to date. Now the thought left him cold. "Tell her I have a previous engagement," he said. "The entire week?" His assistant raised an eyebrow. "If necessary," Dominic replied, already turning his thoughts back to the corner of Mercer and 6th, where tomorrow morning, rain or shine, Yara Fields would be waiting with a cup of coffee that tasted like home. What he didn't know was that while he was falling quietly in love with the woman at the food cart, forces were already in motion that would test whatever was growing between them, because Yara Fields had secrets of her own, secrets that were about to collide with Dominic's world in ways neither of them could anticipate. And not everyone would be happy to see the CEO of Vostek spending his mornings at a humble food cart, especially when they discovered exactly who Yara Fields really was. November arrived with its bitter winds and early darkness. Yara now set up her cart before sunrise, her breath visible in the cold air as she arranged her pastries and got the coffee brewing. The space heater Dominic had given her made all the difference, creating a warm pocket that drew customers like moths to a flame. "You're busier than ever," Dominic commented one morning, watching as Yara handled a line that stretched halfway. "Down the block. Cold weather is good for coffee sales," she replied with a smile that had become much more frequent in recent weeks. Dominic leaned against the cart, no longer concerned about getting his expensive coat dirty. "Let me help. I can pour while you handle the food." "You? Working a food cart?" Yara laughed, but handed him an apron nonetheless. "This I have to see." To her surprise, Dominic wasn't half bad. His movements were less practiced than hers, but he was efficient and charming with the customers, many of whom did double takes when they recognized him. "Isn't that the Vostek guy?" she overheard one woman whisper to her friend. "What's he doing serving coffee?" Yara wondered the same thing sometimes. Why did Dominic Voss, who could be anywhere in the world doing anything he wanted, choose to spend his mornings at her humble cart? When the rush died down, Yara turned to find Dominic watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he said, but continued looking at her with that same intensity. "You're just remarkable, that's all." "For selling coffee on a street corner," she scoffed, though his words warmed her more than any space heater could. "For everything. Your determination, your pride, the way you make everyone who comes to this cart feel special." He gestured to the empty coffee pot. "For making the best damn coffee in New York." Yara felt her cheeks flush, and it wasn't from the cold. She busied herself with cleaning up to hide her reaction. "Now you're just trying to get a free refill." Dominic laughed, and the sound did something to her insides. When had his laugh started affecting her this way? "Actually," he said suddenly, serious, "I wanted to ask you something." "What's that?" "There's a benefit dinner next week for the Children's Hospital. I'm supposed to attend, and I was wondering if you might consider going with me." Yara froze. "Like a date, if you want to call it that." Dominic looked uncharacteristically nervous. "Or just as friends. Either way, I'd enjoy your company." Yara's mind raced. A benefit dinner meant fancy dresses, important people, a world she didn't belong in. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that." "That's easily solved. I don't want you buying me clothes," she said sharply. Dominic held up his hands in surrender. "I wouldn't presume. But maybe you could borrow something? Or we could find something within your budget that would work." Yara thought of Rosa, her friend who worked in a high-end department store and sometimes borrowed clothes for special occasions. "Maybe I'll think about it," she said finally. Dominic's face lit up. "That's not a no. It's not a yes either," she cautioned, but found herself smiling back at him. The next day, Dominic didn't show up at his usual time. Yara told herself it didn't matter, that she hadn't been watching the clock, waiting for him. But as the morning wore on with no sign of him, she felt a growing sense of disappointment. Maybe he'd realized the absurdity of inviting someone like her to a fancy benefit. Maybe he'd come to his senses. Just as she was beginning to close up for the day, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. But it wasn't Dominic who emerged. It was a woman in a tailored suit with a tablet in her hand. "Ms. Fields?" the woman asked, approaching the cart. "Yes?" "I'm Miranda Chen, Mr. Voss's assistant. He asked me to give you this." She handed Yara an envelope. "He apologizes for not coming himself, but he was called away unexpectedly to Boston for an emergency board meeting." Yara took the envelope, surprised by the weight of the thick paper. "Thank you. He also asked me to tell you that he hopes you'll say yes." With that cryptic message, Miranda returned to the waiting car. Inside the envelope, Yara found a handwritten note. "Yara, business calls me away, but my thoughts remain at the corner of Mercer and 6th. I still hope you'll accompany me to the benefit. Next Friday. My assistant can help with any arrangements you need." Until Monday, Dominic also in the envelope was a business card with Miranda's contact information and a small photograph of what appeared to be an old storefront with large windows and a faded sign. Yara turned the photo over and found another note. "Reminded me of the cafe you described. It's on Sullivan Street, currently vacant." Her heart beat faster as she studied the photo more carefully. The building was old, but had character. High ceilings, large windows that would let in plenty of light, a corner location that would be perfect for a small cafe. Was he suggesting what she thought he was suggesting? That night, after finishing her cleaning job, Yara walked to Sullivan Street. The building was even more charming in person, a bit worn around the edges but with good bones. Through the windows, she could see a dusty interior with exposed brick walls and hardwood floors. It was exactly the kind of place she had always imagined for her cafe, a for lease sign hung in the window with a phone number. On impulse, Yara took a picture of it with her phone. Over the weekend, she thought about Dominic's invitation and the photo he'd sent. Was he offering to help her get the cafe? The thought made her uneasy. She'd worked so hard to stand on her own 2 feet, to build her business her way. Taking his help would change everything between them. But on Monday morning, when Dominic appeared at her cart with his usual smile and an anxious look in his eyes, all her reservations melted away. "Welcome back," she said, already pouring his coffee. "Did you get my note?" "I did." She handed him the cup, their fingers brushing. "And I saw the building. What did you think?" "It's beautiful, but I'm nowhere near ready for a place like that." Dominic looked like he wanted to argue but held back. "And the other thing? The benefit?" Yara took a deep breath. "Yes, I'll go with you." His face lit up in a way that made her heart skip. "Really?" "On one condition," she added quickly. "No expensive gifts, no trying to solve all my problems. We go as equals, or we don't go at all." "Equals," he agreed, raising his cup in a toast. "I wouldn't want it any other way." What Yara didn't tell him was that she'd called the number on the for lease sign. The rent was 3 times what she could afford, even with her most optimistic projections. The cafe would remain a dream for a while longer. The night of the benefit arrived, and Yara stood in front of her small apartment mirror, hardly recognizing herself. Rosa had come through with a simple but elegant black dress that fit her perfectly. She'd even helped Yara style her hair, sweeping it up in a way that emphasized her cheekbones and the graceful line of her neck. When the doorbell rang, Yara's stomach fluttered with nerves. This was crazy. What was she thinking, stepping into Dominic's world like this? But when she opened the door and saw him standing there in a tuxedo, looking at her like she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, all her doubts faded away. "You look stunning," he said simply. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied, trying to keep her voice light despite the intensity of his gaze. The benefit was held at the Waldorf Astoria, in a ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and floral arrangements that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Yara felt out of place the moment they stepped through the doors, but Dominic's hand on the small of her back steadied her. "Just be yourself," he whispered as they approached the first group of guests. "They're the ones who should be nervous. How about meeting you?" Throughout the evening, Dominic stayed by her side, introducing her proudly to business associates and friends. Some looked surprised, others curious, but Dominic didn't seem to notice or care about their reactions. "So how did you two meet?" asked Barbara Spencer, a tall blonde who looked Yara up and down with thinly veiled disdain. "I nearly ran her over," Dominic replied with a laugh, "and then she refused to serve me coffee." "How quaint," Barbara said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Yara owns the best food cart in the city," Dominic continued, either missing or ignoring the woman's tone. "Her Café de Olla is legendary." "A food cart, really?" Barbara's eyebrows shot up. "And here I thought you were in real estate or fashion or something." "No, just food," Yara replied evenly, refusing to be intimidated. "Simple food made with care." "Dominic, darling, your father would have loved this," Barbara said with a pointed look at Yara. "He always did have a soft spot for charitable cases." Yara felt Dominic tense beside her. "My father would have appreciated someone who works hard and doesn't rely on family connections to get ahead," he replied, his voice cool. "If you'll excuse us, I see the hospital director waiting to speak with us." As he guided Yara away, she could feel Barbara's eyes burning into her back. "I'm sorry about that," Dominic said quietly. "Barbara's father is one of our major investors, and she seems to think that entitles her to certain expectations." "Like being Mrs. Voss?" Yara asked before she could stop herself. Dominic looked surprised, then laughed. "That's never going to happen. Now are you ready to meet some people who aren't terrible?" The rest of the evening went more smoothly. Yara found herself in conversation with doctors, philanthropists, and business owners who seemed genuinely interested in her story. One woman in particular, a restaurant owner named Helen, exchanged contact information with Yara and encouraged her to call about potential opportunities. "The food industry needs more women like you," Helen said warmly. "People who understand that food is about more than just ingredients, it's about heart." As the night drew to a close, Dominic led Yara onto the dance floor for a final waltz. His hand on her waist felt both foreign and completely right, like something she'd been waiting for without knowing it. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. As they swayed to the music, "I know it wasn't easy for you. Easier than I expected, she admitted. Though your friend Barbara was a real treat. Dominic grimaced. She's not my friend. Just someone I have to be polite to for business reasons. There must be a lot of people like that in your life. Too many, he agreed. That's why it's so refreshing to be with someone who just sees me as me. Not as a business connection or a stepping stone or a prize to be won. The intensity in his eyes made Yara's breath catch. They were standing closer now, their steps slowing as the music faded. Yara, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. But before he could continue, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A man was arguing loudly with the security staff, trying to push his way into the ballroom. That's... Yara's words died in her throat as she recognized the intruder. That's my ex-husband. Dominic looked at her in surprise. Your what? There hadn't been time to explain. All those personal conversations over coffee, and somehow she'd never mentioned Marco. Never told Dominic about the brief, disastrous marriage that had ended 5 years ago when Marco was arrested for embezzlement from the restaurant where they both worked. I need to go, she said urgently, already backing away from Dominic. I'm sorry, I can't be here right now. Yara, wait. But she was already moving through the crowd, trying to reach the exit before Marco spotted her. She didn't make it. Yara, Marco's voice boomed across the ballroom, causing heads to turn. So this is where you've been hiding, with your rich boyfriend while I rot in poverty? Security guards were converging on him, but Marco was making a scene, his words slurring slightly from alcohol. You think you're too good for me now, after everything I did for you? He struggled against the guards. Tell them who you really are, Yara. Tell them about the money. And then Dominic was there, stepping between them, his voice low and dangerous. You need to leave. Now. Who's this, Yara? Your meal ticket? Marco laughed bitterly. Does he know? You're just using him? That you'll take his money and run just like you took mine? That's enough, Dominic said firmly, nodding to the security guards who finally managed to drag Marco away. The ballroom had fallen silent, all eyes on Yara and Dominic. Barbara Spencer stood nearby, her phone out, clearly recording the scene, with unconcealed delight. Yara felt sick. This was exactly why she'd kept to herself all these years, why she'd been so reluctant to step into Dominic's world. Her past would always find a way to ruin everything. I need to go, she repeated, pushing past Dominic toward the exit. This time he didn't try to stop her. Outside in the cold night air, Yara flagged down a taxi, giving the driver her address, with shaking hands. As the cab pulled away from the curb, she looked back to see Dominic standing on the steps of the hotel, watching her go. The next morning, for the first time in 5 years, Yara Fields did not set up her cart at the corner of Mercer and 6th, and Dominic Voss, despite waiting for hours in the cold, did not get his cup of Café de Olla. Little did either of them know that while they were apart, each wrestling with their own doubts and fears, forces were already in motion that would either bring them back together or drive them apart forever. Because sometimes the hardest part of love isn't finding it, it's being brave enough to hold on to it when the world seems determined to tear it away. For 3 days, the corner of Mercer and 6th remained empty. Regular customers walked by, confused and disappointed to find no sign of Yara or her beloved cart. And each morning, Dominic Voss stood there waiting, his eyes scanning the streets with growing concern. On the 4th day, he'd had enough. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Miranda, I need an address, he said without preamble. An hour later, Dominic stood outside a rundown apartment building in Queens, gathering his courage before pressing the buzzer for apartment. 3B, no answer. He tried again, holding the button longer this time, still nothing. She's not there, said an elderly voice behind him. Dominic turned to find an old woman watching him from the doorway of the neighboring building. Haven't seen her in days. Do you know where she might be? Dominic asked, trying to hide his worry. The woman shrugged. She sometimes visits her grandmother's grave when she's troubled, over at St. Michael's Cemetery. Dominic thanked her and was about to leave when the woman added, You that rich fellow? The one from the cart? He hesitated. Yes. She talks about you, the woman said, her eyes narrowing slightly. Says you're different from most rich people. I hope she's right. So do I, Dominic replied honestly. St. Michael's Cemetery was vast, and Dominic had no idea where to begin looking. He wandered through the rows of headstones for nearly an hour before finally spotting a familiar figure kneeling beside a simple grave. Yara didn't look up as he approached, though he was certain she heard his footsteps on the gravel path. "How did you find me?" she asked, still staring at the headstone that read, "Elena Maria Fields' beloved grandmother. Her recipes live on. Your neighbor thought you might be here." Dominic stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "You disappeared. I was worried." Yara finally looked up at him, her eyes red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep. Maybe both. "I'm sure Barbara Spencer filled you in on all the sordid details by now." "I haven't spoken to Barbara," he said. "I've been too busy looking for you." "Why?" Yara stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "What could you possibly want with me after that scene at the benefit?" "I want to hear your side of the story," Dominic said simply. Yara laughed bitterly. "My side? Fine. I married Marco when I was 23. He worked as a manager at the restaurant where I was a line cook. He was charming, ambitious, said we'd open our own place someday." She paused, looking back at her grandmother's grave as if drawing strength from it. "Then he started gambling, taking money from the restaurant. When they discovered the theft, he convinced them I was involved. We both lost our jobs, but only... He went to jail. I never took a penny, but no one believed me. No restaurant would hire me after that. So you started the cart," Dominic finished for her. Yara nodded. "My grandmother left me just enough money. She believed in me even when no one else did." She turned to face him fully. "So there it is, the truth. I'm an ex-con's wife with a reputation for theft. Still want to be seen with me?" "Ex-wife," Dominic corrected gently. "And yes, I do, more than ever." "Why?" The question was almost a whisper. "Because I know who you really are, Yara. I've watched you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I've seen your integrity, your pride, your kindness. Whatever happened in the past, it doesn't change what I feel for you now." Tears welled in Yara's eyes. "And what do you feel?" Dominic took a step closer. "I think I'm falling in love with you. Actually, no, I have fallen in love with you. Completely." Yara shook her head, wiping away a tear that had escaped. "You can't. We're from different worlds, Dominic." "No, we're not. We both come from people who worked with their hands, who taught us about pride and perseverance." He gestured to the grave. "Your grandmother, my father, they'd recognize each other as kindred spirits." "It's not that simple." "It can be," he insisted. "Give me a chance to prove it." Yara looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed. "I need some time to think." Dominic nodded, respecting her request, though it pained him. "The corner of Mercer and 6th is awfully empty without you. Your customers miss you." "Just my customers?" she asked, the faintest hint of a smile touching her lips. "I miss you more than all of them combined," he admitted, "but no pressure." As he turned to leave, Yara called after him. "Dominic." He looked back hopefully. "Thank you for finding me, for listening. It wasn't everything he'd hoped for, but it was a start." The next morning, to Dominic's surprise and delight, Yara's cart was back in its usual spot when he arrived for his coffee. She looked tired but determined as she served her relieved customers. "Welcome back," he said when it was his turn. "Thank you." She handed him his usual cup. "I realized I couldn't hide forever." "I'm glad." An awkward silence fell between them, so different from the easy conversations they'd once shared. "Yara, about what I said yesterday." "Not here," she interrupted gently. "So not now, I'm still processing everything." Dominic nodded in understanding. "I'll wait as long as it takes." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, their morning routine resumed. Dominic would arrive for his coffee. They would talk, carefully. At first, then, with growing comfort, and he would help her serve customers during the busy periods. It wasn't quite what they'd had before, but it was something. Meanwhile, unknown to Yara, Dominic was working on something that he hoped would change everything. One snowy December morning, Dominic arrived at the cart with an envelope in his hand. "What's this?" Yara asked as he handed it to her. "Open it." Inside was a set of keys and a business card from the Sullivan Street Building Management Company. "I don't understand," she said, looking up at him in confusion. "It's not what you think," Dominic said quickly. "I didn't buy you a cafe." "Then what are these for?" "I cleared some red tape, that's all. The building on Sullivan Street was caught in a zoning dispute that was making it unleasable. I have some connections in city planning who helped resolve it." He took a deep breath. "The rent is now within market rate for that area, which means it might be within my reach," Yara finished, her eyes widening. "Maybe not today, but eventually. And in the meantime, the management company has agreed to let you tour the space. To help you plan." Yara stared at the keys in her hand. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me tour it with you," Dominic suggested. "Not as an investor or a savior or whatever else you're worried about. Just as someone who cares about your dream." That afternoon, they stood together in the empty storefront on Sullivan Street. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the exposed brick walls and hardwood floors that creaked pleasantly underfoot. Yara walked through the space slowly, touching the walls, looking out the windows, measuring distances with her steps. "The counter could go here," she said, gesturing to one wall, "and small tables along the windows. The kitchen would be in the back, where customers could see the baking happening." Dominic watched her, enchanted by the way her face lit up as she described her vision. "It would be different from the cart," she continued. "More variety of pastries, full breakfast and lunch, but always the café de olla. That's non-negotiable." "It sounds perfect," Dominic said softly. Yara turned to face him, suddenly serious. "Even if I could afford the rent now, there's so much more. Equipment, supplies, staff. One step at a time," he assured her. "Today is just about the dream. Tomorrow is for practical details." She nodded, her eyes returning to the golden light filling the room. "I can see her here. My grandmother. She would have loved this place." "Tell me about her," Dominic said, joining Yara by the window. "The real her, not just the facts." And so Yara did. She told him about Elena Fields, her toughness, her tenderness, her absolute refusal to be defeated by life's hardships. How she'd come to America with nothing but her recipes and her determination. How she'd taught Yara that dignity wasn't something the world gave you, but something you claimed for yourself. As she spoke, the empty room seemed to fill with possibilities, with futures not yet written, but suddenly imaginable. "She sounds amazing," Dominic said when Yara finally fell silent. "No wonder you turned out the way you did." "What way is that?" "Strong, proud, unwilling to take shortcuts or accept handouts." Yara smiled, touched by his understanding. She used to say that anything worth having was worth working for, that the struggle made the victory sweeter. She was right. Dominic hesitated, then took her hand gently in his. "Which is why I want to be clear about something. I don't want to give you this cafe. I don't want to be your investor or your patron." "Then what do you want to be?" Yara asked, not pulling her hand away. "Your partner, in every sense of the word." He met her eyes steadily. "I love you, Yara. Fields, I have since the moment you stood your ground when I nearly ran over your cart. I love your strength and your pride and your coffee and your dreams, and I want to build something with you, not for you or despite you, but with you." Yara's breath caught in her throat. "You make it sound so simple." "The feeling is simple," he said. "What we do about it, that's up to you." For a long moment she was silent, her eyes searching his face as if looking for any sign of insincerity. Finding none, she squeezed his hand. "I'm not used to letting people in," she admitted. "After Marco, after everything, I built walls." "I noticed," Dominic said with a small smile. "But you climbed them anyway," she continued. "With your space, heaters and your cookbook and your persistent presence every morning." "I can be stubborn when something matters to me," he said. "And you matter, Yara. More than anything." She took a deep breath as if making a decision. "My grandmother had another saying. When love knocks, open the door. It may not come knocking twice." Wise woman, she was. Yara moved closer to him, her free hand rising to touch his face. "And I think I'm ready to open that door if you're still knocking." The kiss, when it finally came, felt like both an ending and a beginning. The end of doubt, of separation, of pretending they weren't falling in love. The beginning of something neither of them had dared to fully imagine. When they pulled apart, Yara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you too, you know, even though you nearly ran me over." Dominic laughed, his arms still around her. "Best near miss of my life." "So what happens now?" she asked, gesturing to the empty room around them. "With this place, with us?" "Now," Dominic said, "we make a plan. Together. One that honors your grandmother's legacy and your independence. One that lets me support your dream without taking. Get over. And what about Barbara Spencer and all the others who think I'm just after your money?" Dominic shrugged. "What about them? They don't get a vote." "It won't be easy," Yara warned. "People will talk." "Let them." He kissed her again, briefly. "I'm not worried about what anyone thinks except you." 6 months later, the doors of Eleanor's opened on Sullivan Street. The cafe was small but beautiful, with stained glass accents in the windows and the smell of cinnamon in every corner, just as Yara had always dreamed. The business arrangement they'd worked out was unconventional but perfect for them. Yara maintained majority ownership and complete creative control. Dominic provided a small business loan with fair terms, which Yara insisted on paying back with interest, no matter how many times he told her it wasn't necessary. On opening day, a framed photo of Elena Fields held the place of honor behind the counter, watching over the bustling cafe with what Yara swore was a smile of approval. The food cart remained at the corner of Mercer and 6th, now operated by Rosa, who had left her department store job to join Yara's growing business. It served as a reminder of where it all began, and as a way to maintain the connection with the customers who had supported Yara from the start. As for Dominic and Yara, they continued to take things one day at a time, building their relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine partnership. He never asked her to leave her apartment in Queens, understanding that her independence was essential to her. Instead, they divided their time between his penthouse and her small place, each space representing a different part of who they were together. Some evenings, after both the cafe and the cart had closed for the day, they would sit together in the quiet of Elena's planning for the future. Sometimes those plans included expanding the business. Sometimes they involved traveling to Mexico to visit the places Yara's grandmother had told her about. And sometimes, increasingly often, they involved a shared life that neither of them had expected, but both now embraced wholeheartedly. "Did you ever imagine this?" Yara asked one night as they sat by the window, watching the city lights come on. "That nearly running me over would lead to all of this." Dominic took her hand, his thumb tracing the calluses that she still wore with pride. "No, but I think that's how the best stories happen, not with grand plans but with unexpected moments that change everything. Like a food cart on a street corner," she said with a smile. "Like a woman who refused to be intimidated by a man in an expensive car," he countered. "A woman who taught that man what really matters." Outside the window, snow began to fall, dusting the sidewalks of Sullivan Street with white. Inside, the cafe was warm with the scent of cinnamon and coffee, with memories of the past and promises for the future. And in that moment, both Yara and Dominic knew with absolute certainty that they had found something rare and precious. A love built not on fantasy or convenience, but on reality and choice. A love that had begun with a near collision on a city street and grown day by day, cup by cup, into the kind of partnership that neither time nor circumstance could easily break. "For what it's worth," Dominic said softly, "I'd do it all again. Every moment. Even the near accident." "Even my ex-husband crashing the benefit?" Yara asked with a raised eyebrow. "Even that," he confirmed, "because it all led us here." "Well then," she said, leaning in to kiss him, "I guess I should be grateful you drive too fast and take corners without looking. And I should be grateful you set up your cart too close to the street," he murmured against her lips. "Because you were here first." They finished together, the words that had once been a challenge now transformed into a promise, that, no matter what came next, they would face it as they had faced everything else. Together. The end.